Hey, listeners, welcome back to yet another episode of Cables, Coffee, and Curveballs. We are back after a short hiatus. We have quite a few excellent episodes lined up, which will lead us to Infocom. Make sure you check us out, the Bald AV guys at Infocom. We have quite a show lined up for you at the show as well. But let's get started with the show today. We're your hosts, Rich and George. Sweet Lou on the other side of the glass, but really this side of the glass. Go ahead, do you, fellas?
Hey, I'm back after a long hiatus. I apologize for tearing my Achilles, but we are back. Sweet Lou's here in studio with us today. And Sweet Lou, how you feeling today?
Hey, I'm swell. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Doing great. We also have Nicole with us here today, our new student video editor. She's going to help us. Yeah, she's going to help us get our YouTube channel up and running, and she's going to be managing all our TikToks. And maybe she'll just jump on the mic and ask some questions to our very special guest in studio with us today, Chris Fitzpatrick from Crestron. Chris, as you might know, I don't introduce our guest because I will mess it up. So the mic is all yours.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you not taking a swing at that one. So Chris Fitzpatrick, Senior Manager, Talent Development at Crestron Electronics. Appreciate you having me on. Definitely looking forward to a lot of fun and some good conversation. And also looking ahead to Infocom. There's a lot to be excited about. So appreciate being here.
Chris, thank you for joining us today. Obviously, we're happy to have you in studio. We don't always get to have somebody in studio, so thanks for making the trip up. Could you just give our viewers, listeners, all of our fans out there, just a background on your role at Crestron and what you do on a day-to-day?
Yeah, absolutely. Day-to-day changes quite a bit, actually, but I think that's one of the things I love about it. I've been with the company a little over 4 years. They brought me in to run the internship and co-op program and campus relations. So we've been able to grow that program to a pretty remarkable spot right now. Last year we had over 110 interns and co-op students in our program.
Nice.
Several of whom from PACE, by the way. Including some folks from my team, which I'm very proud of.
Awesome.
And then also diversity, equity, and inclusion, managing that and trying to grow that within the organization. That's certainly important, not just company, but also when you look at the industry, what a big piece that is. And then more recently, moved over and took on a role building out leadership in training and learning and development. So opportunity to develop leaders within the company, talent within the company, and kind of keep everything moving forward. So I wear a few different hats in the HR space, but it has to do with great talent, of which there is a lot out there, and we're happy to be a landing spot for some great folks.
Awesome. And we first met Chris, in person at least a couple months ago. We visited the Experience Center. We were chatting about our AV course with you over there. And I know we have a field trip with our students lined up in the very near future, which we're super excited about.
They're looking very much looking forward to.
Yeah. So speaking of your day-to-day, I'm sure that's a fun one for you, right? To have a bunch of college kids come to the Experience Center and be able to show them all the cool stuff that Crestron's doing and all the paths that they have to internships and everything else Crestron has to offer.
That's one of my favorite things, right? We just piloted that in October for the first time. So that's a brand new program.
Awesome.
Right? I think there's been 4 schools that have done it so far. How
come we weren't the first, George? I blame George. George likes to be the first for everything.
Okay.
So.
Well, we were just building the program. You got to baby steps.
Yeah. You're going to be the first in the month of May.
There we go.
You'll be the first one.
There it is.
To visit in the month of May.
There it is.
We'll make sure we publicize that.
Yeah. So, but what's really neat about it is, coming out of COVID-19, coming out of the pandemic, you hear about some of the Zoom fatigue and everyone's getting tired of doing everything virtually. Not that it still doesn't have its place. It does.
Sure.
But one of the big things we hear on college campuses, go where the students are, right? And for a lot of folks, that means go on campus, but we figured, well, why not bring the campus to us a little bit? Let's show them what makes Crestron so unique, what makes our industry so dynamic and so fascinating. And so we would bus students over and give them a chance to walk the space and give them the opportunity to talk to mentors. A lot of them alumni from the particular school, and then just after walking through the space, getting the chance to learn a little bit more about opportunities within the organization. And we've had as much fun as the students have.
Yeah.
So
George and I are like kids in a candy store every time we go there, and I think this is our first time there since the refresh.
No, I've been there.
You've been there since the past 2 weeks.
He didn't bring you.
Unbelievable.
How's it feel?
He went without me.
That's
wow.
Past few weeks. No,
I'm gonna cry.
I was there last year, I think.
Okay. Yeah, but they were under construction when we were there.
Oh, so you haven't seen the finished smart home
that's
space.
what I meant.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's ridiculous. You're gonna love it.
Can't wait.
You're gonna love it.
Can't wait.
Although I will miss that giant movie theater.
Yeah.
With insane 30,000 speakers on the walls and whatnot, and the reclining couches. That was amazing.
I mean, such a cool space, but I'm going to try and, I can't oversell this. The smart home space that we have built into the Experience Center is incredible, and it is a great representation of just what the technology is capable of.
All right, that's awesome. You know, we're going to talk a little bit more about mentorship and interviewing and all these things, but we are a tech podcast, so I'm going to kick it off with a tech question for you.
Okay, great, because I am the least tech person you've ever had here.
Well, then this is going to be a great question.
Right.
You know, you've been at Crestron for how long now?
A little over 4 years.
A little over 4 years. So, you know, Crestron is probably the biggest AV company in the Americas, even the world, in my opinion, right? Where do you see, from your perspective, where do you see the future of technology, the industry evolving with everything that you see that's happening at Crestron?
Yeah, I mean, hot topic around the organization for sure. And you could ask that question to a few different people and probably get a few different answers. And I think that's what's really exciting about it is there is so much potential and there are so many opportunities. When you look at the growth of the industry just in the last 10, 15 years, there are places in which AV has a home that, you know, maybe were not on the radar some time ago that are now real realities, whether it's, you know, in the super yachts and the hospitality market. Yes. That's a really big thing. I mean, personally, I love the F1 program. Right, the partnership with Mercedes and seeing that partnership, that's really fascinating. You know, certainly smart home has been that. I look at it a lot on the talent side, right? So my lens of where we're going is really not just on where we see the technology, but then where do we see the talent? Right. And I've said for years, I think our internship program at Crestron almost tells the future a little bit. Anywhere from 2 to 5 years ahead of time, we know what talent is going to be really important in the industry just by sort of reading the tea leaves of what our managers are telling us the interns are good at, what they need to do. So 4 years ago, it was cybersecurity. And sure enough, that exploded. I mean, cybersecurity was everywhere over the course of the last several years. And then it was data analytics. And now I'm seeing more and more of these college students coming to us with this data talent and the ability to analyze, represent, visualize, and present data in new ways that help us make decisions. And that's incredibly valuable to us. I think the next things are going to be, we're hearing a lot about AI. You know, that's, I mean, you really, you can't read. Oh, absolutely. You can't read or hear. And in fact, I'm doing this everything I'm saying is just coming right out of ChatGPT. Wow. It's just incredible.
We may or may not have gotten all the questions from Chad. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
I stole that joke from our EVP of marketing. He used it just this morning. Brad Hinsey used that joke this morning, and I just unabashedly just ripped him off right there.
No, well done.
So AI, machine learning is certainly a big thing. Robotics continues to be hot topics, and I think that as we're looking at the future of talent and how we're going to integrate that becomes a big question. At the end of the day, it has to make sense to our customers, to our users. It has to make sense to all of our stakeholders, people we do business with, and if it makes sense, then we'll find a way to make it work. That's what we do. We're an innovative company.
And you know, the partnership when it comes to the internship or hopefully someday a co-op program is something Rich and I, with our AV program, are really looking forward to. That, you know, someday maybe we can structure that and really find a mutually beneficial relationship with Crestron and Pace University. But you know. And by the way, I just have to give a shout out to all the videos. I've watched quite a few of your videos, and
Thank you.
Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks.
That's right.
Correct.
It's a fantastic series. I highly recommend anybody watching it.
Yeah, my fun little YouTube project. You know, trying to put some valuable content out there to help people get jobs or upskill or whatever it is. Yeah, appreciate the shout out on that.
It was
good stuff.
There's a lot of stuff that I thought was very important for a lot of our students to hear. And one of the topics you hit on is mentorship. And it's funny because I've experienced this in folks that I've worked with in the industry over the years. I'm just curious what your take is exchange of information, right? When I'm maybe not even mentoring, right? When I'm in a managerial position and I have my day-to-day reports, my daily reports, so to speak, I have people that don't want to share as much information with them because they are concerned that the student will surpass the teacher, right? And I've dealt with that in the past a couple of times, and it's hard to get over that hump where that exchange of information is really just withholding someone's personal growth, someone's professional growth. So what's your take on that? What do you think really causes that, and how do you overcome something like that?
Well, I think that to some degree there is a certain fear of being replaced, or there is a certain fear of being surpassed. But when you look at a mentor-mentee relationship, and one that's done the right way, right? You see an exchange of information that's very open. First of all, it's got to be built on trust, right? And if you have that trust as that, it really is that foundation, and then that exchange of information flows freely, then that worry should dissipate, right? That worry should go away. And an effective mentor is not going to make themselves replaceable by mentoring somebody else or providing somebody else valuable skills. And as a matter of fact, when we train mentors at Crestron, for example, the folks who are going to be mentoring our interns, or when I'm speaking to mentors on an individual basis, one of the questions I'll ask them is, well, what do you plan on getting out of this relationship as the mentor? What are you going to learn from this? How are you going to benefit? And we have to reframe ourselves and remember that it's okay for the mentor to get something out of the relationship as well, right? It's a symbiosis. It is not a one-way street. Right. So for the mentor, they're developing leadership skills. Right. They're developing communication skills. They are cultivating and really curating talent for the future of the industry, of their business, of their company, of their team, and that should create growth. That should create expansion. That should create more room for people, not create a situation where they're afraid that there's going to be no more room for them.
Right. I mean, in my personal experience, it's less work for me to do. That's how I look at it.
There you go.
But, not everybody looks at it that way, right? And, I'll touch up on a little personal experience, and Rich knows exactly what I'm talking about. But, you also touch upon something called unintentional mentorship, right? So when I was much younger and had a head full of hair, and I had just started in the AV industry, my then boss, he wasn't aware of it, but I looked up to him as a mentor.
Oh,
you know this.
That's why I threw the on.
And we never had that discussion about can you mentor me? But I just kind of followed him around, tried to pick his brain as best as I could. But a couple of years into it, I realized that the relationship wasn't the same from both sides, right? Now, is that how do you deal with that rejection per se? I took it pretty hard. It's been 20-some years, and Rich will tell you I still complain about it, right?
Fair enough.
Yes.
So how do you deal with that rejection? Do you confront it then and there? Should you have an open discussion right off the bat saying, hey, I would like you to mentor me? But then what happens when you eventually find out that your mentor doesn't necessarily give you the right direction per se?
Well, the last piece, right, the mentor not giving you the right direction, that's a tough one to deal with, because again, that goes back to that trust piece, is that if you're going to look up to somebody as a mentor, if somebody is going to take you under their wing as a mentee, then you would hope to be able to trust them to point you in the right direction, to give you some good information. But there's a lot from that story to unpack, right? First of all, the concept of a mentor and a manager, they are neither mutually exclusive nor mutually inclusive. Right. You can have managers who are outstanding mentors. You can have mentors who are in no way managers. Right, so they don't have to connect. Very similar to what we talk about when we juxtapose management with leadership. Right, they don't necessarily always go together. The other thing is that a mentorship relationship doesn't have a defined amount of time, and I think this is also one of the things that people miss, is that you can have somebody mentor you for one project. Right. You could have somebody mentor you through one particular crisis because you know that they've dealt with something similar, or they're somebody that you really respect. But it doesn't have to be formally written out. It doesn't have to be something that you talk about ahead of time. It could be as simple as, I've seen you deal with this really well before. This is something I'm struggling with right now. I'd really love to hear a little bit about how you've dealt with this, and in hopes that I might be able to learn something from you. Right. That is a temporary mentoring relationship, even though it wasn't spelled out that way. Right. And then the other piece is that mentorship relationships don't necessarily have to be spelled out. They can be formal or informal, and either one has its place. Either one can be very effective, right? So with the rejection piece, that's a trickier situation. And the advice that I would give is that somebody who is seeking out a mentor, right, whether they have the mentor in mind or they're just looking for somebody to mentor them and they're looking at some different options, is if there is like you said, a level of rejection, right, if that is not reciprocated, number one is don't take it personally, right? Because in most cases, that person is not saying I can't mentor you because I don't like you, right? It's probably because they may already feel as though they're stretched too thin. If you see them as a good mentor, there's a good chance a lot of other people do too. They may already be mentoring several people, or they may be good at a particular skill, but you may not realize that they don't think that they're mentor material, right? They may have a concern about their ability to provide value to you, and them saying no might be more them protecting you or saying that I think you could find somebody more aligned with you. So trying not to take that personally, still very hard to do. It's so easy for me to say here, sitting here,
Yeah, when you're young, I was 20 something years old at the time, I think.
We won't mention how old you are now.
What's that?
We won't mention how old you are now.
26.
He's 26.
Nice.
Come on.
Solid.
Even Sweet Lou knew that. 26.
Safe space.
It's hard to, and it's not so much. I don't think. Maybe what if the situation is that the mentor doesn't realize that someone is looking up to them, following them. I was new in the industry. I didn't know what I was doing. Right. I was put into a position where I had to support this entire campus, and he was new and I was new, and it was a very weird start to both of our careers here at Pace, and they were, he was a very smart man. He really knew what he was doing, and I kind of latched onto him to learn. And at some point along the line, when you're young, you don't read between the lines, right? You just kind of, you're on the go, you're running.
Go with the flow.
Mm-hmm. And at some point you realize that you've been led on astray, intentionally or unintentionally. I'm not putting that on anybody, right? But that could happen, right? So how do you, what would you, it's not personal, but how do you
How do you
that?
reconcile that?
Yeah,
and that's also what. Well, let's even flash forward to today, right? Let's look at where you're at today. So through that experience, which may not have been the experience that you wanted at the time, and looking back on it, you still might not.
Right.
But now, what are some of the things that you do as a result of that experience that has allowed you, and really in many cases forced you to grow, right? So now in this case, this mentor may have not known that you were looking up to them as a mentor, and as a result was leading you down the wrong path. Well, there's a very good chance that as you're walking around campus now, you do think of yourself as a mentor, or at the very least, you are aware of the fact that somebody else might view you as a mentor, and so you're very intentional about how you go. I mean, this is my experience with you so far.
Yeah,
I mean,
I try to be mindful.
I know it's a small room, not to blow your head up too much here, but I see that.
He's doing a little head bob.
That might not be too much. There might not be too much more room for that head to grow. Right?
So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to note that even some of those experiences, there is something to learn from, and that's right at the heart of a lot of mentoring relationships. Is if you want a mentoring relationship, it has to be because there's something that you want to learn, or as a mentor, something that you want to teach or something that you want to pass on. I wouldn't advise students or anybody really to look for a mentor because of a transactional relationship. Because, see, I need a job, so I better go get a mentor who can help me find a job. So no, what are you trying to learn from that individual? What are you looking to do that's going to improve your skill set, that's going to improve your situation, that will help you find a job? You can't go find a mentor to find it for you. Right? That's not the relationship it is. So just from what you've been saying, it sounds like you learned a lot from that experience even still.
I learned what not to do, yes.
well, that's valuable too, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, but I have had plenty of excellent mentors along the way since. Yep. So that has helped me quite a bit.
Yeah. Says a lot though about 20 years later that we're talking about this though, right? In a good way, in your growth, and in your growth to your current role, right? Where you're managing a lot more people. That actually brings me into our next topic, staying kind of in that same realm of things. Obviously back then, you weren't thinking outside the box, like, oh, I might have a whole staff one day. I just want to, we're going to push the carts around. I'm going to take care of this and take care of that. I'm going to fix, I know, I'm dating myself, but I'm going to fix this room. So on and so forth. Fast forward 20 years later, you're managing multiple campuses. You have to hire people. You have to deal with student staff, full-time staff. So that brings me, what I'm circling around to is the interviewing question, right? So in the past, I would say the experience, and just because I have interviewed with you and for you and all of the above in many different roles, the interviewing process, right? And I think that, again, this can cater to anybody really, but especially pivoting to that career angle, right, Chris? And the one thing I wanted to mention about Crestron also, everybody sees it and thinks technology immediately right off the bat, right? Mm-hmm. But you've already just within the first 20 minutes we've been on here, you've already talked about like your role, and I haven't heard anything about technology, right? In the sense,
and you probably won't.
No, and exactly, which is a good thing. Like I think we've encouraged even our students in our classes, and everybody that we've spoken about this relationship we have, that it's Crestron is not just technology. Like you don't have to be a computer science major.
Yep.
So that was a little bit of a tangent for a second, but because what I really wanted to circle back to was the interviewing part, right? So I feel like from your perspective, George, you probably had a lot of experience over the years watching other people do interviews, and you hired students obviously earlier in your career, which is a certain process, and now moving on to hiring full timers, which is even more of a different process. So from a perspective of interviewing, I think the biggest one I want to ask right after, I'm going to jump right to it, is when you're in an interview, is asking a salary question like live on the spot interview, is that a no-no, or is that like
it's my biggest pet peeve?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because I feel like there's some people that want to know, and I guess they have the right to know, but is it like, I don't know, I'm just gonna open the mic to you for Chris on that, 'cause I don't know how else to ask it, but is it a no-no? Is it a okay? Is it depend on the situation?
That is it's a hot topic, and it's also a moving topic, right? Because if you'd asked me this question 5 years ago, even, the context is slightly different.
Okay.
Right? Now, I can share what my perspective is, right? And my perspective has even changed a little bit, where the way I've been doing talent acquisition for over 16 years.
Okay.
Right, all total, and mostly with the college and the early career crowd. And the way I was kind of taught, and the way I was mentored, was it was not a topic that you brought up until you got to an offer stage. Okay. Right, it was just not a topic that was discussed.
Yeah.
And then probably about 7 or 8 years in, I started questioning that a little bit, and I started saying, well, why can't we have that conversation, and why can't we take some of the stigma away from it? Well, if you look at now, right, you look at today, in a world of pay transparency, which is a hot topic in a lot of states right now, right, from both a legal standpoint, but then also just how organizations want to tackle that discussion, there is a lot more discussion on the table about the pay transparency piece. So I do think that it's important to at least be mindful of it. And I think anytime that you can take some of the stigma away from it, it's a good thing. But for a job seeker, right, the advice I would give a student, for example, who's interviewing with a company, is not to lead with that question.
Fair.
Right? Because you also want to make sure that you're focusing on making the best possible case for why you would be the person who deserves whatever the compensation is, right? And then the other piece is you want to learn about the total value proposition that organization has. It's not just the annual salary, the hourly pay, or whatever it is. There's also a lot that you want to find out about how they train and how they develop, right? What are my opportunities to learn? How might I be able to develop and to move up? Is there a career path for me here?
Right.
How do you create, again, a safe and inclusive space, right? That's where the diversity, equity, and inclusion discussion comes into play, is if I feel as though I have psychological safety at a particular organization, I feel like it's a place that really appreciates my contributions and sees me as valuable to the larger organization, and I see my work has an impact, that can be more impactful than just the amount of money on the paycheck for a lot of folks.
Sure.
And I would advise students not to lose sight of that stuff also. You want to learn a little bit about everything that organization has to offer, while also giving them the chance to learn about you. And when it's appropriate to talk about compensation, maybe the company will bring it to your attention and we'll ask you that question. Or you get to a second or a third interview and it becomes a topic of, I'm really interested in this organization. I really like what I've heard so far. I've been through a few interviews. I've met a bunch of different people. I would like to have a discussion about things like compensation, benefits, total rewards. When do you think would be appropriate for us to have that discussion? And I think it's a perfectly fine way to handle it.
Yeah, yeah. And something else you kind of alluded to, and something we were going to go into, being prepared, right? So that's one step to being prepared, doing your research about a company, not going into an interview kind of blindly without having any background on the company, the role. And yes, I mean, salary is part of that, right?
Sure.
At the appropriate time. So from that perspective also, let's talk about resumes for a second, right? Getting somebody in for the interview. Obviously, there's a process before that, right? Which is browsing through hundreds of resumes, or depending on the role, thousands of resumes.
Potentially, yeah.
And I think the big thing that tends to happen, I think George and I both run into this over the years, and we're curious of your perspective. Sometimes somebody comes in with a rock star resume, right? And it's, they interviewed well or well enough, but the resume kind of pushed them over the top. And then later on, everything kind of just crashes and burns, for lack of a better analogy. What is your best advice for kind of seeing through maybe an inflated resume, if you will, or an interview that wasn't necessarily, sometimes you can read, it's easy to read people, sometimes it's not. But what is your best advice with seeing resumes, being able to filter through them, and then picking the appropriate candidates to then interview and make a decision on?
Yeah, that can be one of the biggest challenges of talent acquisition, right? Is the sheer volume sometimes that we get of these resumes, and how do we make decisions on who we're going to bring in for interviews and how we're going to go about that. And there are statistics with this too, right? So for example, I mentioned earlier that at Crestron we hired over 110 interns. Right. And I love doing this when I talk at college campuses. I'll bring this up a lot. Is we had 113 interns and co-op students in our program in 2022. And I'll ask the question, how many, in fact, let's even do this live here.
Sure.
How many resumes do you think were submitted for the intern program to get to that number? How many applications do you think we got?
I feel like no matter what number we say, it's going to be short.
700.
700. Okay, so 700 resumes submitted for the internship program. What do you think, George?
I'm going to go with 950.
950. All right, cool.
Price is right rules?
100%. So you can bid $1. If you go over, you lose your showcase. I mean, listen, aspiring game show host, right?
Oh, that's right. We got to talk about that too at some point.
You beat me to that.
Talk about the love for game shows.
I had that on my list of things to ask you about.
The answer is more than 13,000.
Holy
more than 13,000.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So what you're saying is I won that.
100%, absolutely. Congratulations.
Cool, thank you.
New car. But that also means is that less than 1% of the resumes that were submitted ended up in the program. So it's hyper competitive, right? Goodness. Despite the fact that it's one of the largest and one of the, I think it is the best internship program in the industry. In fact, I think it's across most industries. But it's also hyper competitive. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the number of resumes we look at, the number of resumes that don't get through all the way to the end of the process, it's not a small number, right? But the other part of the challenge is trying to understand the person behind the resume without just drawing a line and taking everything out below it, right? So for example, one of the things I don't personally look very closely at is GPA.
Okay.
There are so many factors that can affect somebody's GPA. Mentorship is one of them.
Fair.
You see folks who have a ready supply of mentors, people who are there to guide and to provide kind of an idea, a role model. Folks who don't have that, they may find their way through it, but they may have a little bit of trouble at the outset, and it might reflect in that GPA. Mm-hmm. And we generally see that GPAs will disproportionately affect individuals from historically marginalized backgrounds, right? So we take GPA out of it, or we make it part of a conversation of, well, okay, so why is that? Why is it there? But tell me more about yourself. Tell me about your passion. Tell me about your interests. That's really the differentiator. Mm-hmm. And then you brought up preparation before, right? Yeah. So I've done somewhere over the course of my 16 years, probably over 20,000 phone interviews, give or take, right?
Wow.
And oftentimes one of the first questions I will ask is, tell me about why you applied for this role. And that is a preparation question, right? Because the answer is not, well, because I need a job or because I need an internship.
Let's hope not.
Well, obviously that's why you're here. That's great.
Right.
But what did you learn about the organization and about this position that stood out to you? And there were times in which I could disqualify 50% of the resumes just for a lack of preparation. More interviews and career fairs and experiences are won and lost on the preparation stage than on the actual execution of the interview.
Interesting.
Because we can overlook, little interview mistakes. Everyone makes them,
of course.
Right? But a lack of preparation is that is something that we might see in the future. If you were not prepared for the interview, can I trust that you be prepared for your job? So that is a big piece of advice I'll give students as well, is make sure you do your research, make sure you prepare. The number of students who go through their entire college career and never visit their career center just blows my mind.
Yeah.
And they're paying for it whether they go or not.
Yeah.
So if you don't go, hey, thanks for the donation.
Right.
That's all it
Exactly.
is. But if you
Exactly.
go, you have a chance to really cultivate these
And
skills.
we do have a beautiful, amazing
We have a
career
great
services
career
department.
I'm
service
here.
so impressed with Pace's
Yeah.
group here. I mean, everyone I've dealt with over the last 4+ years has been incredible.
Shout out to Pace Career Services.
100%. They deserve every bit of the shout out. And Ava Petrillo from my team, who's our talent acquisition specialist, who is a Pace alumna, joined Crestron as an intern
hey.
last April, right? Yep. Last April, and then went full time. She graduated last May, went full time last June. So she wasted no time.
Yeah. Right.
She owns now the recruiting relationship between Pace and Crestron. And what she tells me about the communication from the Career Center and what a great job they do preparing students, that gives me a lot of hope for the future of that relationship, knowing that we're going to keep getting great students from this school.
Yeah.
And you're going to get amazing MCVA students out of the AV program here.
Yes,
Absolutely.
speaking of, we just had Ava. She was a guest speaker a couple weeks ago in our class.
Rockstar,
and
right?
Did a phenomenal job. Rockstar is
Graduated
like
less than a year ago.
Yeah, which is why
Yeah.
she was.
Well,
She was
Pace grad. What do you expect? You
Right,
know,
there you go.
she was a
Rock
seasoned
stars.
vet, and our students loved it. And it was perfect timing because she was on campus, I think, the next day at the career fair. So the timing of the guest speaker and then putting a name to a face in person the next day was perfect for many of our students. And they came back and were like, "Hey, I saw you on Zoom last night," that kind of thing. So it was kind of cool. Speaking of the Pace AV course.
Well, I have, Rich, if you
sorry.
don't mind, I
Yeah.
have a quick question because you said something that triggered a question in my head. This is something that I've been hearing. You mentioned GPA, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going off the rails here, guys.
No, you triggered something back that I wanted to ask too now because I forgot. Go
well,
ahead. No,
this is gonna go on forever
Yeah,
now.
good. That's fine. That's fair.
All right. On the next 4 hours.
On the next, you mentioned something about GPA, and you don't put value much into the GPA, not value much into the GPA.
I don't want to disqualify somebody
right.
just based on that alone.
Yeah, that's fair. I
Now,
like that.
I heard in a couple of my circles, I've heard that, you shouldn't be asking for a bachelor's degree as a requirement on a resume, or you shouldn't be asking for a, Crestron certification preferred. Is that something that's changing in the industry as a whole just from a hiring perspective? I'm still, to me, seeing a college degree on a resume means commitment. To me, it means somebody started something and saw it through, and obviously saw it through well to get that diploma, right? To me, Pace University is a Crestron shop, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking for a resume. I would prefer some sort of Crestron experience, if not certification. Is that something that's changing in the industry today?
Yeah, I can't speak to what it's doing in the industry, but I think overall in the talent acquisition world, it's been a question that has been asked, very similar to the compensation question, that we're hearing more and more, and that is, the requirement of the bachelor's degree with folks who decide that they want to go an alternate route. Is it a requirement? Should you be requiring a bachelor's degree? Now, I tend to agree with you, but also it depends on the position. And by the way, so many of the questions that I field, and if you watch my YouTube channel, you'll see this. If you hear me talk to and mentor students, when they ask questions like this, I often start with, it depends on the job. And it sounds like a cop-out, but it's not.
Right.
It honestly really does depend on the job. There are some roles in which the existence of an aligned bachelor's degree or even a master's degree does provide real tangible value because it's a skill that's hard to replicate, or we think that the schools do a good enough job of preparing students with those skills. Right? But that's not to say that there aren't roles that, when you think about it, the bachelor's degree might be nice, but it's not required. Now, same thing with the skill set, right? There are skills that are absolutely necessary to a job. Right. And those have to always be on a job description. But yeah, if I'm hiring somebody for an internship or an early career position and I see a Crestron certification, then not only do I see that skill set might align really well, and not only do my ears perk up a little bit, but then they probably have a little bit more of that preparation, that knowledge of the organization. They probably had a chance to learn a little bit more about what we value or how we go about doing certain things. So their learning curve might be shorter.
Right.
Or it might be the result of, I got this certification, I learned about this company, and wow, now I'm really excited to talk to them.
See, for me, it's a double-edged sword because and shameless shout out to MCA 165. When we are hiring in this industry, asking for a bachelor's degree usually comes back as an IT background or marketing or whatever it is, because there is no degree in this field, right?
Right.
So is that, I guess a degree is a degree, so it shouldn't technically matter in that sense what degree you have in. So maybe you don't ask, a required bachelor's degree in computer science or something along those lines, because a 4-year commitment to a school, to education system, that is a commitment, that is a good, solid foundation. But I'm just curious as to if that is a trend because there isn't a degree program in our industry, or if that's just a universal trend.
Yep. And it makes me think of one of the other pieces of advice that I'll give students fairly frequently is also to remember to keep an open mind in their job search, because your degree, whatever it is part of who you are, but it does not define you.
Right.
A story that I tell pretty frequently, this is going back to an older company that I was at, where we hired a lot of folks in the customer service and the sales realm. So it was a lot of customer facing roles. And I had a young lady come in, and she had a degree in what was essentially marine biology, or similar to marine biology, from University of Connecticut. And she put herself through school. Right, she worked part-time, full-time jobs. She got involved where she could, but she had to put herself through school, and she put herself through school with jobs doing customer service and sales-related jobs. And then after 3 years of the marine biology program, she got an internship in her field. And within 2 weeks of doing the internship, she realized that wasn't what she wanted to do. But she was already, I'll use the poker term, she was already kind of pot committed.
Yeah.
Right.
Because now I've gone through 3 years of schooling here. I'm in these capstone courses. If I were to change now, I might be here for 3 more years, and I can't do that. It's not an option for me. So she wrote out the degree, but then she was thinking, all right, well, so what am I going to do as a result? So she ends up in the interview with me. She tells me the story and about how her favorite part of her week was often going to that job and seeing those customers and doing that work. That told me more about her than her degree would.
Right.
Right. Told me more about her character, told me about her work ethic, told me about her resilience. It also told me where her passion lied. And she went on to be very successful with that organization. I always remember that story, because if I had looked at that resume and said, I don't want to talk to this person because this major does not align with what we do,
right,
I might have missed out on a really great hire.
Yeah. Two things. One, you said marine biologist. I immediately think of George Costanza. Anyway, Seinfeld episode. I think he was a marine biologist. Yeah. Is that right? Anybody? You watch Seinfeld, Sweet Lou?
We'd have to ask Keith.
Oh, Keith.
Yeah.
Let's get Keith
Keith
online.
is a Seinfeld guy, you're right.
Second, personal experience. I've been working in AV/IT for 20 plus years now. My degree is in business management.
Mine too.
Undergrad. And my master's is in education. I was going to be a math teacher.
Okay.
Common theme throughout, since 2002 when I left high school, I have been working in IT and or AV since then. Yeah. I pursued studies in other areas. My degrees.
You're welcome, Rich.
Thank you, George. George, my mentor.
Happy to take credit.
But seriously, if I handed you my resume, right? From your perspective, you would look at it and maybe, we'd start having a conversation. But if somebody else looked at it and was just like literally looking for a computer science degree, or like George mentioned, an IT degree, they'd be like, oh, this guy, like even his job experience, like I don't see, he has a business degree and a education degree, but I've always worked in the industry. I've learned everything I know by doing and through professional development and taking this on and now building this course at Pace.
Hey.
Perfect example of what you just mentioned, Chris, honestly.
There's a ton of value there. And also this is a bit of a plug for students out there, especially if you're early in your college career, right? So first year students, second year students. I'll also underscore the importance of getting involved on campus, right?
Sure.
I will say straight up, I am a sucker for extracurricular activities, leadership activities, things like that. I love that stuff on a resume, right? Because
Absolutely.
it shows me the skills that you're probably not going to get in the classroom, right? It's those, I don't like the term soft skills, right? I like the term human skills, right? The skills that are harder to automate.
I'm using that from now on too. I like that better.
Human skills.
I like it.
So this is where you develop your communication. This is where you develop your time management, your prioritization, your teamwork skills, your problem solving in many cases, right? I love that on a resume because sometimes that'll tell me as much about what they're interested in, what they're passionate about than their major will.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this one more step forward. Sorry, I know you have a point.
No, I'm good. I did my 2 points. You're good.
All right.
Go for it.
Fair enough.
Go for it.
So this is also, and let's hear. It's time for you to pick on me, Rich. I'm going to go old school. I am old school. I can't help it. All right. When somebody comes in for an interview, jeans and a t-shirt, slouched into the chair, and this is a word that folks have laughed, but not properly groomed. You are coming into an interview. Show me that you want to be here. Is that something that can or cannot be used anymore?
So as I alluded to earlier, it depends on the job.
Right.
Right. It depends on the industry. It depends on a lot of things. This is another area where when I advise students, when I speak at college campuses or even on the YouTube videos, I will remind students that whether they know it or not, they are the CEO of You Incorporated, right? You are the CEO of your own personal brand.
Believe that, Rich.
It takes months or years to build.
Got it.
It can take moments to destroy.
Yeah.
Right. So as the CEO of your own personal brand, you have to decide what you think the best representation of that brand is going to be.
Yeah.
And if you can take that with you as a guiding principle on how you go about situations like that, I think there's value.
Yeah.
The other thing I talk about, again, a lot in these YouTube videos and in over 100 talks I've done on college campuses, is that there's 4 major kinds of communication. Right? Verbal communication is the first one people often identify. The words we choose, the volume, the pitch, the variation, the timbre, things along those lines. But nonverbal communication is as impactful, in many cases more impactful than verbal communication in many, many ways. So I would encourage students, job seekers, any professional to also think about what they're communicating non-verbally, whether they know it or not. And it's not just attire, right? It's not just that, but it's also their eye contact, their posture, right? Smile, body language, things like that. It does tell a lot about you.
Right.
And generally somebody will have their first impression made about you within the first 8 seconds of meeting you. That's how long it takes
Nice.
That
to
sounds about
form
right.
some idea, right? So if I'm standing if I'm at the Pace University Career Fair, right, which is usually, I mean, it's Ava's job to quarterback. She quarterbacks that one.
Right.
But if we're standing behind the table and the student is walking up to us, within 8 seconds, we at least have an idea about how confident that person is, how prepared they are,
Right.
things along those lines. So you want that first impression to be as positive as possible. Now, it's not to say that if the first impression isn't what you would hope, you can't recover from. Of course you can.
Right.
But it is important to think about that brand ahead of time because in your case, right, an interviewer who thinks about it a little bit more traditionally doesn't mean that you have to go to it doesn't mean you have to go to an interview at a casual job in a suit and tie.
Right.
But you do want to be aware of what message you're sending.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't expect suit and tie, but if you're coming in, it's ironic for you and me, but comb your hair, right?
Well, that was a low blow, George.
Clean the dirt between your nails. I'm not making this up. I've seen this, right? Everything else is good. They put their hands on the desk and there's dirt between the nails. Like, is there a certain level of detail that you should do before you walk into? And is that detail, am I being too old school or too judgy saying, why is he wearing that T-shirt that says "Don't care"?
And before you answer that, I just want to shout out Chris. He told us when he got here, he brought up the A+ suit for the podcast today.
Yeah,
I just want to
he
point
did.
that out. I mean, we were rocking the Crestron hockey jerseys, but I just want to give Chris a shout out for the suit today.
Well, I'm also thinking I should have brought the hockey jersey with me because I have it in my closet. Shout out Justin Spengler,
Yes, Justin.
another member of the podcast guest wall of fame.
Yes,
he is.
Outstanding. So that would have been a lot of fun too. But I mean, I think that there are some things. There's a limit to this, right? But I think anything that we can do as interviewers also to be empathetic and to try and really focus on the value the person brings, right? Because the other thing about that is if they really do have the skills and they have the passion, and they have the drive, and again, they haven't been mentored. Maybe they don't have the folks in their circle to tell them, what is the way to go, or maybe provide them that advice.
Right.
But they do have the skills, and you might have somebody who has a real world of potential. A lot of this stuff's also coachable,
Right.
And that's the other thing to remember.
That's fair.
Is to say that if you see that person through and you end up hiring somebody who a lot of other organizations might not take a look at, you might end up finding one of the most motivated people in the talent pool. And then if you can mentor them and coach them and provide them with that direction, you might find somebody who you have a tremendous amount of loyalty, for a long, long time and a great skill set. So, I think that there's a lot that we can do to teach job seekers, students, individuals about how to put their best foot forward with their personal brand. Mm-hmm. But we also need to be aware of training interviewers to be careful not to overjudge and to make sure they try and focus as much as they can on skill set and what somebody brings to the organization.
Actually, fun story on this part, true story. And Lou, you'll appreciate this because you know this person very well. this was years ago, what feels like, and he was interviewing with me for a supervisor position, put down the wrong day of the interview on his calendar. But I knew him personally, called him up and said, "Hey man, you're supposed to be here for an interview. What's going on?" And it was, "What? That's today?" Needless to say, he was in my office in 30 minutes. And I looked past all that, hired him, and he was hands down one of the best employees I've had. No names taken. You know this person very well, Lou.
Is it Lou?
It was me.
Dun 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 dun.
No. But you're right. You have to look past certain things to see that potential and groom that potential. And, great things from this person. And he's one of my closest buddies. Love the guy. But, there's another question. Maybe Nicole's going to be all ears. Maybe she has a question here.
Nicole's on the edge of her seat. She's really into the conversation so far.
She's in the interviewing process. So.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Good luck.
So if you're looking to hire somebody, Nicole is brilliant.
Duly noted.
Nicole, I think you have a question for Chris here today, right?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
I'm in the interview process because I'm graduating in the spring.
Congratulations.
Yay.
That's awesome. Woohoo.
So you're talking about things that you shouldn't really do in an interview. Like, what is one thing, I know you're talking about how there were so many applicants. What is one thing on like a resume or like an interview that really stands out that like either gets the person to the next interview process or that you're like, oh, I really want to interview this person that's on their resume? I don't know, something that like stands out of all of those applicants.
So I am a fan of the strong close. Right, which means at the end of the interview, when you've asked the interviewer your questions, whether it's about the organizational culture, about the process, about something that you researched, being able to say to the interviewer, I'm really interested in this opportunity. I've enjoyed everything I've heard so far. Do you have any concerns so far about my candidacy for this role? And that accomplishes two things. First of all, is if that interviewer does have any concerns, it gives you a second chance to address them, because there may be a concern that you just didn't think about and that you didn't have a chance to address, but now you get to. But if you never asked that question, you may never have known until it's too late. Right, so it gives you a second chance to talk about any concerns that the interviewer had. But then the other piece is it also subconsciously signals to the interviewer that not only are you willing to accept coaching and constructive feedback, but you're willing to ask for it. And that goes along with the sports analogy, right? Is the coachability is a tremendous skill. Somebody who can accept feedback and use it in a constructive, positive manner instead of feedback being a cause for somebody to shut down. That is also a very valuable skill. So I do like that. The research thing I think is very important. I think one of the best things that you can do is when you're reading a job description, your job description is like a playbook. I'm using a football analogy here. Now I'm also bouncing around. But in many cases, your job description is like your playbook. And any chance that you can take to look at the skills that are required for the job and relate them not just to skills that you have, but to specific examples of how you've utilized those skills, right? So Nicole, what's your major, for example?
I'm a digital cinema and filmmaking major.
Okay, so digital cinema and filmmaking. There has to be some specific software that comes up on a lot of job descriptions, right? And you may be proficient with that software. But just saying that you're proficient with that software is not going to be as valuable as telling a story of a time that you used that software on a project, whether it was a school project, an internship, maybe it was a personal project. But to be able to say, I noticed that this particular software was a requirement for this job. And I was very excited to see that because I had a lot of fun using that particular program on this project. I'd love to tell you a little bit about it. And to provide a specific example that relates to the skill. And that's really what interviews are. Yeah, part of it is personality driven, but a lot of it is skill driven. Right? So being able to relate the required skills to your experiences is a tremendous way to make the interviewer visualize you doing that job. Because while you are telling that story, visualizing yourself working on that project, the interviewer doesn't know what that project looked like, so they are visualizing you in their mind's eye doing the job that they're interviewing you for. And if you can get into that headspace, it gives you a competitive advantage.
And I can relate to that. I can attest to that. Some of the better interviews that I've experienced while interviewing somebody is someone that's prepared, someone that has the knowledge. Right? They've been to the PACE website, they've checked out the Ed Media website, they've seen what tools we use, right? And it becomes more of a conversation than a Q&A. And that back and forth, I think, just in that room, in that moment, builds a relationship that gives you a stronger opportunity. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris.
100%.
But that conversation that comes from your Q&A becomes more valuable to me as an interviewer, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah. I also want to just speak for a moment about networking and follow-up, right? Because I get the question a lot about, well, when should I follow up with my interviewer? Should I follow up right away? I generally say within 48 hours of the interview, probably closer to 1 day. Sending a follow-up email just to say, thank you so much for the opportunity to meet you. I learned a lot about the organization, about the position. I was especially interested in, and then there's something that they talked about that really did grab your attention. Please let me know if you have any concerns or any follow-up questions. I'm looking forward to hearing back from you. And then if you don't hear back in a week and a half, to be able to send something back out saying, I just wanted to let you know I'm still interested in this position. Can you give me an idea of when you might be making a decision and if there were any concerns or questions I can answer? Right. The other piece is networking. This happened to me very recently. I was speaking at a college campus, and there were about 26 students in the room that I was speaking in. And I asked them, and this was a technical institute as well, and I asked them all to raise their hands if they had a LinkedIn profile. And all 26 hands went up. And I said, all right, keep your hands up for a second. Now, keep them up if you can tell me confidently that your LinkedIn profile is 100% complete. 25 of the 26 hands went down. Right? So only 1 out of the 26 people were confident that it was 100% complete. So that's another piece of advice I'd give to any job seeker, whether a student, a graduate, or anybody at any point, is if you have a LinkedIn profile and it's incomplete, invest the time. It doesn't take long to make sure that it is complete. So that way you can follow up with a networking request to your interviewer or to somebody that you meet at an organization. So it's a really great way to, again, extend that connection forward.
Yeah, and I think putting LinkedIn on your a fully completed LinkedIn profile on your resume is a plus, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Because a LinkedIn profile, in many cases, it becomes a living resume that is easy to update. And the other thing is, if you get endorsements and recommendations from professors, from club and organization leaders, from mentors, again, going back to the mentoring conversation, they are like letters of recommendation that follow you around without being asked for them. And that is incredibly
Being a fresher coming out of college, I think it's very important to, ask your professors, here's my LinkedIn, can you please endorse me? I think that's it's very beneficial.
So anybody out there who's listening who is looking for somebody with Nicole's skills,
hey,
Exactly.
she's the best at everything.
Got to hear at PACE.
Thank you. That was perfect. I feel like I'm learning so much just listening to this. Wow.
I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, like free you get free consulting hours until 5.
I feel like I'm in an interview.
She's in an interview.
You're supposed to be looking at my list.
All right. Yes, you don't have to.
Well, so while you're thinking of one, right, the anxiety of an interview, that can be a really tough thing, especially for early job seekers to get over.
Right.
And that's the other big piece of advice, is to remember that anybody that you are ever interviewing with at one point was in your shoes and had to interview with somebody else, right?
That's true.
The worst thing that we can ever possibly do to you is not hire you.
Right.
Right. That is literally the worst thing. So don't be trying to be afraid of or intimidated by somebody at a career fair or somebody in an interview, because really deep down we can empathize.
Also, chances of that person remembering you, were you to cross paths later down the road, very slim to none.
Yep. Well, but at the same time, I will often advise students to, even if you realize during an interview that there's a job you don't want, like this isn't the company for me, this isn't the job for me, to still continue and to make sure that you make that known tactfully, right? To be able to say, this has been such a great experience getting to know about the organization. I don't think it fits with what I want to do right now, but I really appreciate the time, and I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn in the future, so that way we can maybe be part of each other's network, because you never know when that person is good. Because talent acquisition professionals, there's a good number of them that will be at several different companies in their career, and you might end up interviewing at an organization where that person works in the future.
Different time.
And if you make a positive impression on them and connect with them professionally, then there is at least a chance that they'll remember that they had some positive association towards you.
Shout
Never
out,
burn a bridge.
Shout out to George for my in the AV 20 years ago. I won't tell you what our conversation was about in my interview as a student. Probably has something to do with sports, but here I am 19 years later.
I don't know why you feel the need to put numbers on everything.
I'm a numbers
He's a
guy.
data guy. He said
Yeah,
that before. He's a
I'm
data
a-
guy. I
I'm
respect
numbers,
it.
man. I was going to be a math teacher.
Math guy.
So.
What is, and I think you talk quite a bit about this on one of your videos. What is the right amount of questions? And is not having any questions at the end a sign of, hey, did you really pay attention to anything that was going on in this interview?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the video you're talking about is the interviewing your interviewer
Yes.
video. That one's relatively recent.
Yeah, yeah.
I did my homework.
Yeah, I like it.
Yes.
Very nice. See, preparation.
Well done.
I would not advise somebody going into an interview unprepared to ask a few questions. So the general rule of thumb that I like to advise folks on is to at least come up with 5 to 7 questions that you think you might ask, but then prepare to ask 2 to 3, right? Some of those questions might be asked during the interview. As a matter of fact, I used to warn people ahead of time that I hope you have questions, but I will warn you, I'm probably going to get to some of them because I'm going to provide more information to you than you're used to in an interview, right? But questions about whatever's important to you about the job, about your team, about the culture, the research that you do. I love questions that begin with some sort of research or preparation, right? I was on your website and I was learning about, all the great Crestron technology and how it helps students learn in the classroom through educational uses. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you think the future of that is? Right?
One of the best interviews we've had in our own personal experience was somebody telling us something was wrong on our page.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
Wow.
So again, preparation, right? That research is done. It's just a great way to subconsciously signal to your interviewer, I really did take this seriously. I have prepared for this. I'm not coming in, without something ready to go. But also, you're not going to have time for 20 questions,
right,
while you're there, or that may not be the interview, right? I'm a non-technical guy, right? I wear that on my sleeve. So I get a lot of students if I'm interviewing them for internships at Crestron for engineering roles, computer science roles, really specific. They'll ask me questions about the project that they're going to be working on. What technology am I going to be working with, and how is that going to impact the company? I say, that's a fantastic question. I love that question. Hang on to that one, because there's a good chance you're going to be interviewing with somebody who is infinitely more qualified than I am to answer it, and you'll get more information, right? So the only reason I can't answer it is because I don't know. Right, those 113 interns that we hired last year, to get those 113 interns, we had more than 80 completely unique job descriptions. Wow. Right, we're not using the same job description to hire every single one of them.
Wow.
It's literally tailor-made to what a particular manager and mentor need at that particular time, and it can evolve over time. So I can't keep track of what 113 different people are going to be doing over the summer, right? So that's where the hiring manager comes into play. So
still can't get over that number. Was it 113 out of 13,000?
13,000 plus, yeah.
I mean, that's in my head still. I can't get. I'm a numbers person, and I can't get that out of my head.
And we could probably go off for another hour on job descriptions and how that works.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll call you back for that one.
Yeah. Solid.
But I'm going to continue on that question because you said something. Have 5 or 6 questions ready, and they might. Some of those questions might be answered during the interview, right? Is it okay? Maybe we interviewed you. You answered something that I had a question for already, but it wasn't completely clear. Is it okay to say, "Hey, I know you covered this, but I just wanted to clarify I understood, and here's my question." Is it okay to restate that question?
Absolutely, 100%, right? There's another talk I do about phrases that are underutilized in business today. And one of those is, does that make sense? And so when you're explaining something to somebody and you want to confirm that they understand what you're saying, being able to pause for a moment and ask them, does that make sense? Right? Is this clear? Are you understanding what I'm saying? Not in a condescending way, but in a way that's honestly trying to ensure comprehension.
Sure.
And for the other person to be able to say, I was unclear about something. Could you explain this, or could you go into more detail? Or I'd love to hear more about that. I applaud that, because it's much worse if you are worried about asking that follow-up question because you don't want to appear as though you don't understand what they're saying.
Right.
And then you never get clarification and you end up going out of there with the wrong information.
Right.
That is much more dangerous than appearing as though you didn't understand what somebody said.
Right.
Especially, so many of us as interviewers, we're used to talking about our companies and our businesses so often that we can take for granted that somebody who hasn't heard as much about it, either we use jargon or there's something that we talk about, we go through very quickly. Somebody stopping us and saying, hey, I didn't really get that one part. I have somebody on my team, his name's Christian. He's unbelievable. He's our senior talent acquisition specialist for campus and diversity and inclusion. And one of the things that I've learned from him in the just about 15 months that he's been on my team is that every once in a while he'll pop over and he'll say, okay, comprehension check. And he'll repeat what he thinks he heard, and he will say, I just want to make sure I have this right as I'm about to take action on it.
Yeah.
Right? And then that's also a great chance for us just to reconnect and for me to say to him sometimes, not just is it clear, but how do you feel about that? Can you think of any other way you'd like to tackle this? So maybe his comprehension check gives me a chance to check in with him and say, do you have a better way in many cases? And I love that he does that because it shows a lot of humility, but it also shows it's really important to him that things get done right.
Yeah.
So
it goes back to George's point from before too about you weren't afraid to learn from somebody on your team. Right, that hierarchy thing that George was talking about before with the whole mentor story. So it kind of comes full circle there, where you're mentioning this specific situation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Got to be open to any kind of positive advice too. Yeah. Sweetly, you know what I realized? We do a lot of shout outs on the show. We probably need a soundbite of some sort every time someone or something gets a shout out, like a little musical soundbite or something.
Noted.
Maybe that's it.
Duly noted.
Maybe every time we do a shout out, it's just Lou saying noted.
No, yeah.
We'll do this one.
Is that the
No, that's Joe Flacco does.
That's
We
the
can't-
Joe.
Sorry, that one's already.
Yeah.
Flacco does.
We'll
Oh my
figure it out,
goodness!
we'll
Yeah,
figure
when
it
we
out.
started a couple months ago, Flacco was unfortunate. Speaking of,
Oh boy, here we go.
I mean, I was gonna go on to Infocom, but let me throw this in there since that was a perfect segue.
Hey.
Our listeners aren't aware of this, but Chris is a diehard Packers fan, so now you are aware of
I think
this.
many of your listeners are probably aware of this.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. They're definitely aware.
Jordan Love era begins now.
That's it.
And I, as most of the listeners know, I'm a diehard Jets fan. So
That's the only kind of Jet fan there is. You don't have a lot of bandwagon Jet fans. Sorry,
this
Jet fans.
is true.
So I don't do the sports thing, but are you guys gonna fight to the death right now? Or what?
No, definitely not.
No. But it was a cordial exchange, I guess. I just wanted to hear Chris's initial thoughts on Aaron Rodgers getting traded to the Jets.
Yeah, is it good
It's the
riddance
end of an era.
or is it good riddance or is it? Why does this keep happening?
So it's because we're so still, we're so ensconced in the conversation that the lights keep going down.
actually
Yeah.
It's really cool. Everyone on YouTube's really going to love that. And
That'll be our thing. That'll be our thing.
They're really setting the intense mood for this Green Bay Packer Aaron Rodgers conversation here. How cool is this? So I think it's mixed emotions in Packerland. Certainly on Packer social media, it's mixed emotions because there's a lot of us where we loved going into every season saying that no matter what our team looked like, there was always the footnote of, but they have Aaron Rodgers, so they have a chance.
Right.
And prior to that, it was Brett Favre. So I've been spoiled by the fact that I started watching football around 1994.
Okay.
I became a football fan in part because of my uncle's love of the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
And he was loud about it. I mean, not that we know many very
most Cowboy
quiet
fans
Cowboys.
are.
Exactly. So, and in the early mid 90s, they were very good. So he had a lot to be loud about. So, I was rooting against him just because I wanted somebody to shut him up. Right. And so in 1994, Packers Cowboys were playing in the NFC Championship game. And so I go over to his place to watch the game, and I'm just rooting for whoever's playing Dallas at that point. And he has a bunch of buddies come over who were from the Wisconsin area, and they've got their cheesehead hats on and all this stuff. I'm thinking, I'm 13 at the time. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
You wear cheese on your head? Sign me up. Right? So I'm watching the game, and the Cowboys end up winning that game, but I said, that's my team. I'm a Packer fan now. It's like I learned about Vince Lombardi and how the fans own the team and everything like that. I got the Favre jersey. It was great. So I've been spoiled by 30 years of this quarterback play. So I think there's a sense of, we're definitely going to miss him, but it's nice to not have to go into another offseason having to answer questions about will he, won't he, which is also what happened with Favre.
Or if he goes into the darkness and comes out and says, I'm not playing anymore.
Which we almost just did there a minute ago. I think that was our darkness retreat.
Hey.
That was our darkness retreat here.
We've had two so far today.
So
Also, if history has anything to do with
Yeah, I was
this,
just gonna say it. Yep.
you guys are in damn good hands.
Right, you draft a quarterback,
Yeah.
you let him sit for 3 years behind a Hall of Famer,
Yep.
and
What
he
a-
comes out, and
yeah.
all of a sudden, Jordan Love
Is that the secret recipe?
Maybe.
No other teams really do that. You
The
guys have,
key
well, I
is-
mean, Mahomes sat behind,
That's true, he did.
behind Alex
right?
Smith for
Yeah,
a year,
fair.
and he did okay.
Fair.
In Green Bay, the
Okay.
key
I hear
is
he's good.
He's pretty good.
I hear he's good.
He's decent.
in Green Bay, the key is the quarterback goes to the Jets.
Yes.
Right, and hopefully not then the Vikings. Right, exactly.
Oh my.
Well, that
goodness.
was just that was silly.
Let's stay on the sports thing. We are not hockey guys. I'm not going to pretend like we're hockey guys, but I know there's some big stuff going on in the NHL right now. I know you're a diehard Devils fan
Big
as well.
Devil fan, yeah, big
and they're
Devil
playing the Rangers right now, which, that's usually a rivalry in general, just because of proximity. But the fact that it's happening in the playoffs, I
Yep.
just wanted to give you the floor for a little bit, just to talk about that a little bit.
My anxiety is not okay with this whole Devil Ranger playoff series thing. This season's been a lot of fun, right? It's been nice seeing all this excitement and all the buzz among the Devils faithful. But of course, playing the Rangers in the first round, it's got everyone on edge. And I know you'd love for me to give you the whole rivalry thing, but at the end of the day, Rangers are a heck of a team too. They got so many awesome players. It has been exciting. It's been an interesting kind of first couple games. But that's not even the team that's not exactly the team I'm the most focused on right now, believe it or not.
Really?
As focused as I would be on the New Jersey Devils right now, or on the Packers trading Aaron Rodgers, the most important team to me right now is my 6-year-old's little league team.
Love it.
Right? It's my little man's farm league team.
Excellent.
Right? So he's doing all right.
That's
He's
what it's
having a
all
lot
about.
of fun. Exactly.
Shout out! You said he was a catcher, right?
He tried catcher for the first time last, what
something.
was it, 2 nights ago, and he
Excellent.
absolutely was a natural. He
Yeah.
loved
That's
it.
something.
He loved it.
That's my position.
His
I love
mom
that
was
position.
not. My wife was not necessarily thrilled
Fair.
with seeing him put on that equipment, but
Yeah,
he
yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
Catchers are, my boy plays and he plays second base, center field. But catchers, man, they're tough from the little league on. You
Gotta
know
be.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Gotta be.
Yeah,
So.
I've seen a couple of slide plays that shouldn't happen in the little league happen. So
Yeah.
they're built tough. So
We just had him watch A League of Their Own.
Ah,
And so funny enough, he was watching the scene when Kit slides into
Nice.
Donnie
Yeah,
at the
there it
end,
is.
which I still think is one of the greatest endings to a sports movie ever.
For sure.
I thought that movie's a masterpiece, and
sure.
so he's got to be prepared for that. And I think the important lesson is hold on to the ball.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you a
Dottie.
quick, I'll give you
robbed.
I'll give you a funny story that happened recently. I don't think anyone in the little league listens, so it's okay to put it out there.
How do you know?
But
How do you know?
I don't know.
Future
maybe.
of AV, man.
Well,
Yeah,
fair enough.
unbelievable. Give us some
you
more
know,
credit than that.
Last weekend, my son's team had a game, and the kid that was pitching, he was having a rough time. They put up like 6 runs. They got mercied that inning, and he was crying off the mound. And,
Oh, no.
And I wanted to say something, but I couldn't. So I texted Rich and our other friend Jimmy, who's a Ranger fan, by the way, and I had to do the meme of
Shout
"Are
out,
you
Jimmy.
crying?
Go Devils. Shout out, Jimmy. Go Devils.
Jimmer always comes up every podcast. Love you, Jimmer.
Are you crying? There is no crying in baseball.
Yes, full on. That's funny.
But no,
crying, sir.
honestly, it was very hard for a moment. I felt for the kid.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
wanted to give him a hug, but
Yeah.
Absolutely, but let's tie it to the earlier conversations, right? Part of the reason why I love watching my 6-year-old play these games, and even watching the Devils games with me, and me telling them, listen, they're not going to win every single game, and that's okay. Same thing with him. He doesn't make the play, doesn't make the throw, or it's like he gets really kind of down on himself. He gets frustrated.
They take
by
it personally.
Absolutely, because that's what he knows. Is that you either make the play or you don't, and that's fine. And I love his competitive streak. Right, competitiveness is a great skill, but I also have to have him understand. What did you learn from it?
Right.
What and developing the skill of also being able to shake that off quickly and then support your teammates. Right. And when we take it back to the job skills conversation that we had earlier, athletes can be really terrific interviewees because they can talk about teamwork, they can talk about competitiveness, they can talk about leadership, communication, time management, work ethic, all of these different skills that if I could bottle and sell, I'd be a billionaire, right? So I'm also trying to instill some of those skills in my son right now, and trying to help him understand that he's got to learn something from each of these experiences, but also go out and have fun. I don't want to. I'm never going to be one of those parents that is putting so much pressure on him to succeed that he doesn't enjoy the game.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's fair. I got two more quick things. Actually, then I'm going to circle back to Infocom. We always do streaming season. We try to be cool and ask our guests what they're watching. So it's streaming season within the SZN acronym. So we try to be hip and cool and with it, and everybody makes fun of us for it. But it's pretty fleek.
You're the one.
It's pretty
Yeah,
fleek.
here we go. Here we go. It's only matter of
fleek. I like to use these.
God,
Is that 2007?
Yeah, at least. What are you watching right now on Netflix, Hulu, whatever streaming thing you got going on? I know everybody has a different one they like. So
I really feel bad about this.
Oh no,
Nothing.
Okay.
No, because I have a lot going on professionally.
Fair.
I got my son's games. I got the hockey games on, everything. So it's usually sports and everything like that. But then I'm also prepping the YouTube videos, writing the articles and everything like that. So really, there's I haven't even gotten into the new season of Mandalorian yet.
Wow.
And I really liked it.
Okay.
I do want to check that out at some point. I will make time.
Fair. You did mention you're a Breaking Bad fan, though.
I was a Breaking Bad. My all-time favorite is Mad Men.
Okay.
Mad Men is my favorite show of all time.
All right, awesome.
Love Breaking Bad.
Take all
I've gone
time.
through it 5 times.
Nice. 5, nice.
Yep.
Lou, how many times have you watched Breaking Bad?
I've never heard of it.
I plead the fifth.
So
Nice.
Yep, and then I'll watch a lot of the same stuff over and over again just to have in the background.
If you watch Breaking Bad, you're good on the show.
There's no worry there. You won't get many references past me there.
Yeah, fair. I have to ask you this. It came up earlier. I had it on my list of things to ask you. Aspiring game show host.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. Tell us more.
What the heck is that about, right?
Tell us. And I'll let George wrap it up with the Infocom and Avixa stuff after that.
I want you to audition
Wow.
for a game show right now. Are you ready?
Lou
I'm
on
going
the
to count
spot.
you in.
Well, he's got the A+
All right.
suit on, so we're
I'm
ready.
going to count you in.
Sweet
Ready?
Lou has his eyes lit up. He has a smile on his face.
All right, in 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, Rich, George, and Lou, thank you for that tremendous welcome. I really appreciate it. Welcome to one more edition of our podcast. We have some outstanding prizes for everyone out there. Let's get started. I started watching game shows when I was about 5 years old. I got into The Price is Right, Wheel of Fortune, and started watching Jeopardy at a young age. And I just thought Alex Trebek had the coolest job in the world. So I have been consuming game shows throughout my life. My all-time favorite being Press Your Luck, Big Money, No Whammies, Stop. And if I could apply any skill to what I do now, whether it's speaking or working professionally at Crestron, it's that game show host presence where everyone has a good time and everybody's a winner here. How's that?
Yo, that was pretty sick.
I'm just going to walk out of this studio. This show's yours now.
I feel like we just need to do a mic drop and end the podcast.
One cut.
Yeah.
Right?
One cut.
Wow.
I think you got the job.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
You're hired.
Yeah.
So I've always loved game shows for some inexplicable reason. And when the Game Show Network was created, I was really worried I was going to become a recluse.
I was really impressed that Lou had that on cue.
Well done.
And then you blew me away with what just happened.
Also, Press Your Luck it's summer, I think, on my oldest loves Press Your Luck. She watches it, I think, over the summer. It's the new episode. She has it all.
Elizabeth Banks is hosting.
She has them all recorded on YouTube TV, so she watches them over and over and over and again at nauseum. But she also watches all the new ones when they're on. And I gotta agree with you. Between that and The Price is Right, I don't know which one I would pick.
Yeah. The hardest part about watching game shows for me now is looking at it and looking at the host and saying I should have that job.
Fair.
Right. I did when they were doing the guest hosts for Jeopardy. I was tweeting fairly regularly saying, give me a shot. I can do this. Even with Aaron Rodgers up there.
I was going to say, were you going to compete against Rodgers?
I wore my number 12 jersey on the days he hosted.
Hold on, the lights are going off again.
We're talking about Aaron.
I'm kidding.
It's getting mood lighting.
Oh man, this was great, George. You want to wrap it up with? I know we want to talk about Avixa a little bit, the foundation, the scholarships, and just
So
maybe a
much to
little
talk about.
Infocom shout out also.
Yeah, well, he said everything I wanted to say. So I know you're doing something at Infocom.
Thunder
and
stolen.
scene.
Yeah. We need another soundbite for every time Rich steals my thunder.
Well, that would be a lot.
I know you're doing something special this Infocom. Do you want to talk about it?
Well, I mean, there's so much going on in Infocom 2023. It's shaping up to be an incredible show. So in addition to the work that I do with Crestron and just what a phenomenal company that is to work with, I've also been able to volunteer some time supporting Avixa and supporting a lot of their efforts. So I currently am the secretary-treasurer of the foundation board, which is the part of Avixa that awards the scholarships to the future of AV, right? So students who are pursuing, whether it's a trade degree, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree. They're pursuing some form of education in the AV space, and they see it as part of their future. And what we want to do is try and remove some of the financial barriers by providing scholarships to them. So the Foundation Board has been a tremendous opportunity. And here's a shout out to Joe Valerio, somebody else from the podcast Guest Wall of Fame.
Hey.
Joe's a great guy. He reached out to me early on in my time with Crestron and asked if I would be interested in learning more about the Foundation Board. And there's a little imposter syndrome on my part, I'll tell you, because I was so new to the industry. But getting involved with AVIXA and getting involved with the Foundation Board has been great for me because I've learned so much more about the industry as a result of it. That goes back to the whole get involved thing that I was talking about as student advice, because you'd be shocked what you learn.
Right.
You know? So it's been a great chance for me to learn more about the industry, but also to give back to an industry that gave me, an outsider, a real chance.
Awesome.
And then in addition to that, I got involved with the Diversity Council several years ago, and I work closely with Frank Patakala, so I'm on the Executive Planning Committee for the Diversity Council and the General Council. We've done some phenomenal events, and so at InfoComm this year, what I'm most excited about is we're going to bring those three worlds together, right? The Crestron world, the Diversity Council, and the Foundation Board. So Crestron is sponsoring the Diversity Council event, which I believe is. I believe it's Wednesday afternoon. I got to check the time, but I believe it's on Wednesday. But the Diversity Council event, we have a tremendous keynote speaker. But one of the things that we usually do at that event is we give out some sort of swag. Right.
Nice.
So this year, instead of the swag, we're going the sustainable route, right? So instead of getting something else that's going to end up on someone's desk or potentially, not make the cut and end up in the garbage,
Or the regifter.
right? Or the regifter, right? The
Fair,
stocking stuffer and everything like that.
Fair.
What we're going to do instead is for everyone who comes to the Diversity Council session, Crestron is going to make a $10 donation to the Foundation Board to provide another Mosaic scholarship.
That's awesome.
To a student. And the Mosaic scholarship is the one that seeks to provide scholarship support to students from historically underrepresented backgrounds. So that's our diversity and inclusion scholarship. So in one shot, by getting people to come out and listen to a message on diversity within the industry, just by showing up and registering, they will result in a $10 donation to the Foundation Board to provide education assistance to somebody who wants to call the AV industry home in the future.
Amazing.
So
That's awesome.
just
We'll be there to spend some more of Crestron's money.
love it. Well, awesome. Bring your friends, right? Because it's a great way to give back to the industry. And again, the industry has created so much talent. And I love the direction we're going in. I'm optimistic about the future. So this is another opportunity for us to be able to do that, to kind of pave the way and to pay it forward. So and anyone who's going to be at InfoComm 2023, you'll see me. I'll be around. Come say hi. Come grab a photo. Throw something on social media. Support all the events. Right. I know the Women's Council breakfast. I go to that every year. It's awesome. Those folks do such a phenomenal job there. Their speakers are always on point. Anything from the Diversity Council. Meet with members of the Foundation Board, learn more about what we do. And if you're really driven by something that you hear or that you see, become involved, right? It is never too late to get involved in these activities and to give back to the industry and to give back to the community.
That's really awesome, and we're going to be at InfoComm, so we hope to, we'll do our setup. We're going to be at a couple of spots, so we really hope to catch you on your busy schedule, and get another opportunity to chat with you on the floor.
Side note: a couple of our students have already expressed interest in the scholarship and have asked us for recommendations. Which is, we just told them about it a week ago. I know it just opened in the last week or two, whatever. But that kind of, as George and I would say, it warms the heart a little bit. It's a little warm and toasty moment from some of our students that have reached out to us already and are interested.
Our students really kick ass. Like I can't even underplay that. I tell Rich this. I'm like, this batch of students is so fantastic that we really have to temper our expectations for the next batch. There's no way.
They set a high bar for
sure.
They did.
You know what I mean?
But for those students, if they set a high bar, they probably also will blaze a trail for other people to follow. Right?
Yeah.
That's the other hope, is that they're going to, they will inspire the students who come next to say, hey, I can do this. This is a viable path for me. This is something that I can do. And this has not been anything that we rehearsed or anything like that, but I really want to shout out the two of you guys, because the fact that you're all doing this, you're doing this podcast, which gets a great message out, right? And it's important conversations to have. But then by driving this program, which is so unique, across the entire country.
Only one of its kind.
Right, exactly. I mean, to do something that unique and to provide that career opportunity and that pathway, and then to partner with us, right, to partner with Crestron to bring the students on the campus to talk about ways forward, to talk about career paths and everything like that. Things like this, these organic activities do so much.
That is our favorite word, Chris.
Yes.
Organic.
Yeah, and
Yes.
you mentioned this is not part of the script. We don't really have a script.
No.
Organic is our favorite word. Sorry.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Actually, I use juxtaposition before. That's my favorite. That's my
Hey-o.
favorite.
I'm adding that to the vocab.
Yeah, solid. So
Nice.
But no, I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing,
Thank
because
you. We
hearing
appreciate
about
that.
these students wanting to pursue those scholarships, that's the future of our industry.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's awesome. Let's wrap the show up for today.
Yeah.
Chris, there's so much more we need to talk
Yeah,
about.
you're definitely coming back.
Yeah, you
Cool.
definitely have to come back. And I'm not talking about the Infocom show floor. That's
Yeah,
just going to
yeah.
be like a quick hit, but we want you back on the show. We have so much more to cover with you.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun. Appreciate you having me.
Cool.
But, to all our listeners, we're back. We're going to be on the Infocom show floor, so come see us. We're going to be at the Starin booth. We're going to be with the VIXA. We're going to be at the T1V
Yeah, you
booth.
got it. Yeah, you're good.
English is not my first language. So we really look forward to seeing the AV family out there, reconnecting, and just rocking out Infocom like we always do.
Yeah. And before we do our sign off, did you know what today is, George?
Is today the National Hug a Horse Day?
It's National Hug a Horse Day. It's not really. It's like National Hug Day and National Take care of a horse. But I think we just
it's
made
help
our
a
own.
horse, hug a friend?
Yeah,
Is that
help
what
a
it was?
horse,
Help a
hug
horse,
Yeah,
hug a
Chris
friend.
got it right. But we made it National Hug a Horse Day. So
Yeah.
we just wanted to keep up with that tradition.
Yeah.
That
It's
one-year
also-
tradition.
That one's tradition. So here we
Also,
are.
isn't it Alien Day? So we got to
it's
shout
Alien
out our
Day.
guy,
Jimmer.
Jimmer.
got to mention earlier.
Yeah. Two in one
He got
episode?
2 in 1 episode because he is a firm believer in the
Aliens.
alien life.
And that they're here.
and that
Or is he
they're
like a
here.
fan of the movie?
Nope, he believes
believes
that they're
they're
out there.
here.
He,
Okay,
he
fair.
sta- sits in his window at night sometimes and sends us pictures, and I will leave it at that.
Okay. And he's a Ranger fan?
Yes.
I just wanted to correlate
Yeah.
those two things.
Oh boy, we opened a can of worms.
Hey.
Hey. Chris, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and obviously we'll be running into you real soon again.
Thank you both.
Until next time, folks,
Be kind,
stay steady,
help someone,
check in on an old friend,
and have
a
good cup of Joe on us. And
Take care.
Take care.
And take care.
Lou always hits it with take care.